Hey there, how's it going? Welcome back to our Growing with book study. And we're here in looking at chapter 5, which really now is transitioning to talk about faith and the faith that we're developing in our youth, our children, but also ourselves. And so I think this is a great chapter. I definitely connect with this chapter a lot, just with a lot of my passion and what I do with my job. But I'm curious what it's like to be a parent and kind of read this chapter and go through this process of looking at faith and how we're developing faith. It gets at right away, I think, a challenge that we have with faith, with the church. And that is really, I think, the question, what is your faith? And I would say the default for so many Christians, and I think even particularly Lutheran Christians, and in a city like St. Louis, even maybe Catholic and Lutheran Christians, is sometimes our faith, and maybe a little too much, is just an activity. And here's what I mean. Faith is that we go to church, maybe Christmas and Easter. Our faith is that we go to church. Our faith is maybe like a religious obligation. And what Christ died for is that we could have this relationship with God again, with his Father, the Creator. And so Jesus has restored that relationship. And so I know a lot of times too, even as a youth leader, what I try to convey unintentionally is that, hey, faith is like participating in a youth activity. Faith is coming on Wednesday night or Sunday night or on the retreat or whatever that is. And really, that's not what we're ultimately trying to get at. And I think this is why we have some challenges at times when youth grow up, post-confirmation or post-high school, is that they're so used to their relationship with God being an activity and something that they do. And so once they maybe aren't being forced to come to confirmation anymore, or they're not required to come to church with their parents or anything anymore, they haven't learned some of the disciplines and some of the ways that we can interact with God outside of church. And so my question for you guys is, even as parents, is what is your faith? How would you describe that? How would you write that down? What is your faith? How would you tell your children what your faith is? What is your relationship with God? And I think that can be kind of a hard and scary question, because some of us, and this is not meant as a slam, but just as an observation, some of us unfortunately haven't matured in our faith beyond participation. And participation in coming at 9 o'clock on Sunday morning. And that doesn't mean we don't have a relationship with God. That doesn't mean we don't, that we don't believe that Jesus died and rose. That's not what I'm questioning. I'm just saying it's hard to have our children be vibrant in their faith when we're not vibrant in ours. And that's what this class is about. I think that's what this book is about, is how do we pass a legacy of faith down? And ultimately, I would say that we would believe in Jesus, that our kids would be in heaven with us. But so I think until we're able to articulate what our faith is, what our relationship with God looks like, I think it's hard to then maybe pass that down. And sometimes it's just reviewed as, well, like, you just got to go to church. You got to go to church. You got to go to the worship service. Or I couldn't get, my youth Daniel to participate in your youth activity. Well, at the end of the day, I'm concerned much more about your child's relationship with God than their participation in a set event, whether it's a worship service, a retreat, a Sunday morning thing, whatever. Another thing that it starts talking about is as kids start to transition from having the faith that they were raised with and transitioning maybe high school, college, or even younger, questioning God and having doubts. And I'm here to remind you guys that there's really no point that I think any Christian gets where all our doubts are removed. There's no point. And with all our doubts, all our questions. Okay, I have a theology degree. I'm studying to get my master's degree. I work at a church. I've been in ministry for 15 years. Am I an expert theologian? No, but I think I'd like to say that I'm more of an expert at times when it comes to faith and matters of the Bible than maybe the average person. And I still have questions and doubts. And so part of your job as a parent is to talk and talk and talk, dialogue and dialogue and dialogue with your child so that you can maybe help them wrestle with these challenges. Some of these faith issues are going to have answers, and some are not. Some of them are going to be an opportunity for them to come talk to me, come talk to another adult leader, talk to one of our pastors, talk more with you. It's hopefully going to be an opportunity to address their concerns, some of their fears, some of the issues that they wrestle with as they continue to mature and grow and take more ownership of the faith that you've raised them in. So another thought from this chapter when it comes to your faith is, what's your faith story? Parents, what's your faith story? And do your children know it? Have you ever wrote it down? Have you ever thought about making a video about it? Have you ever told them how you ended up at Christ Memorial? How you ended up maybe what faith your parents raised you with or didn't raise you with? What is your faith journey? There's not a right way to have a faith journey. Your journey is your story. And so I don't know if you've shared that with your child and why maybe you are so passionate or you're so interested in passing faith down to them. I think sometimes when we're able to connect and we're able to show how much we care to our children, I think it means a lot more than, hey, it's 8:30 on Sunday morning, you got to get them to come to church because this is what we're saying you got to do. That can get real lost in translation, and I think you're able to say, this is what faith was meaning to me, and this is why I got you guys baptized, and this is why your dad and I, or this is why we do what we do. I think that is important to know what your faith story is. And so I encourage you this week to maybe start thinking about what is your faith story and sharing your faith story with your child. And I would also encourage you to maybe take a few moments in prayer. Maybe you've got a journal, maybe you've got a place that you can write this down. But what is your relationship with God? Maybe you're talking to a friend, a neighbor, a coworker, but I'd even encourage you potentially to talk to your child and be able to explain to them what is your relationship with God. Maybe you do things that they see, and maybe you do things that they don't see or are not aware of. But it is hard to pass down faith. I think it's challenging. It's a lot easier just to pass down church attendance. But really what we're trying to develop here at Christ Memorial, in which I would hope if you're participating in this, you're trying to pass down faith and a relationship with God. That they would know, as we talk here at Christ Memorial, that they're loved and sent, but that they would know what it's like to have a relationship with you. And that includes things like prayer and scripture reading and serving others and worshiping God, not only at church, but maybe in how you do your job and how you perform at school and how you worship God in your relationships. There's just so much depth to this, and we're going to kind of talk more about this as we get into next week. But what's your story, and what's your faith relationship with God? I think you've really got to be able to articulate that, not perfectly, but I think you've got to articulate that in some form to be effective in passing faith down to your children. And so blessings as you guys work through the questions this week and you look to just kind of continue growing your relationship with God and with your child. And so thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next week.